Yeah, and the other comment that I'd like to make about that customs control is that the fact there's one now and there never has been in the past is also backed up by the fact that I've now seen 3 police cars since the point at which we crossed the border. It isn't even especially, like holiday season yet. The schools haven't fully broken up. It's getting to that point. And I never seen quite, since the time of Schengen, I never seen quite so much additional controls. It just goes to show that they're getting ready. These Antichrist states are getting ready to start controlling us more and more and more and more across the European Union. It's not for nothing that I recently changed my avatar. I don't know whether I'll have changed it to something else by now, but by the time you see this, I changed my avatar to it's basically the European flag, but it's got more than 12 stars in it because I couldn't really do a join the dots with only 12 stars. I think it might have closer to 20. But I did a join the dots thing, which if you join the dots together, you basically get the human genitalia, male human genitalia, or something resembling it. I mean, I could obviously wriggle out of it and say, oh yes, that's a flower. That's the petals, the 2 petals, and the stamen in the middle there, pointing upwards. But basically, it's my comment on what the European Union is. It's basically, well, that's what it is. Yeah, it's just a dick. Yeah, which is basically copulating all of us. So far, since I changed the avatar, which is just really practically yesterday I did it, back in, the day before yesterday, I've just had nothing but praise from people. It's made the readability of my comments on Google and YouTube suddenly go up, and I've suddenly noticed that the number of likes on my comments and responses to my comments is just from that one thing alone of changing the avatar to something rather provocative, has really noticeably hiked. So people really do react to that sort of thing. So there we are. If you're a commentator, you want more people to read your comments, then put some striking button on there, and it will probably happen. So certainly, I noticed a lot of other commentators are putting on buttons which are far more striking and interesting. Some of them are repeats of each other. You tend to get that Danish cartoon of Muhammad coming up quite a lot for people that want to make anti-Islamic comments in the main. I suppose that people are going to expect that my avatar will mean that I'm really aiming at making a lot of anti-EU comments. I think basically corruption in the States, an additional control over ordinary citizens when they can't get their own act together, is what I'm protesting against, and the way that in which what we signed up for in the European Union isn't what we're getting. We were told that we were getting Schengen, where we'd be able to have, without any impediment, go from from state to state. I didn't budget on any impediment this morning. I got an impediment. It's probably the difference, because it's now 9:13, the Polyglot conference starts at 10 o'clock. Well, if it hadn't been for that, maybe I'd have made the start. As it is, I'm probably going to be a little bit late. How late, I just don't know just yet. Depends on how long it takes to pick my way through Berlin to Lehrterstrasse on a Sunday morning. I don't think it would take that long. But basically, that's an impediment, isn't it? If I was going to be late anyway, which is possible, it's made me a bit later, so I've lost some of the conference now, thanks to that. Is it fair? Is it what we signed up for? No, it isn't. More and more and more controls. I waved them goodbye politely as I passed them. I don't take anything. If you're one of the guys that was on that film, yeah, I don't take anything you did personally. You've got to do a job. I've done jobs I don't like. They were perfectly all right as human beings, yeah. It's the state which tells them what to do. They've got to do it, yeah? And it's the state I blame, and not any individuals of them. I don't want anybody starting to call them dickheads or whatever in the comments. That's not thoughtful, okay? That's not a thoughtful reaction to what you can argue. Well, yes, I would rather not do that kind of job. I certainly would rather not do that kind of job. But in a sense, I do a similar job because, after all, it's European Union law which states which companies have to be audited, and I go and audit them. So if somebody wanted to take a really rigid view of it, you could say almost that there's a dotted line anyway between what I do and the and European Union law. Although I do it in Russia these days, which is a different matter. It's difficult to work in anything and be free of the world in which we live, which is controlled by Satan, unfortunately, for the time being, but not for long now. We're looking forward to a time when that will all change, and we will be changed. So maybe some of you think, well, what's all this about? He's an accountant, he's an auditor, he's a Christian, and yet he has an avatar, which is like the European Union flag, but the stars have been rearranged to join your dots version of the human genitalia. Well, okay, it's a bit Lutheran, isn't it? Luther was always full of rather earthy commentary. I wouldn't want to be necessarily associated with a lot of the things that Luther did, because some of the things he did were downright bad, completely to be repented of, like his anti-Semitic tract. Just one of the worst things that he could possibly have done, and still he did it. But still, even the Bible itself, which is a faultless messenger of how to carry on, also does refer to genitalia, delicately of course, on a number of occasions. So it's not like to be a Christian or to be righteous or to be godly, you must ignore the question of genitalia. I don't think so. I think that's just prissiness. I don't think it leads to anything necessarily constructive. Certainly talking about them the whole time, or bringing them into situations where there's no need, but basically to make a symbol explaining what the European Union is doing. Well, sorry if anybody's offended by it, but you should be offended by the European Union, that's for sure. You should be up in arms about it. If any brethren think that using earthiness is a bad witness, well, read the Bible a bit more carefully in future. I mean, St. Paul himself, when he discussed the Galatians, the people that have been telling the Galatians to get circumcised, he said, I wish they'd go ahead and cut all of their choppers off. Yeah? And of course that doesn't get translated properly into any English version. The King James Version says, I would they were even cut off that trouble thee, or trouble you, not thee because it's singular, trouble you. But and Putin, when he made a very similar statement, sitting next to one of my least favourite people on this planet, Mr. Crow Jensen, or Crow Anderson, or Foe Anderson, or Foe Jensen, some Crow Foe Anderson Jensen character that runs NATO. He was sitting next to him and explaining that, that if people, want to make Islamic terrorism, they should come to Moscow, and he will refer them to a doctor that won't just give them a circumcision, which will completely castrate them. Very similar to the words of Paul in Galatians. And Mr. Crow Foe Jensen Jansen Interceptor, he suddenly started to look as though he had heard the most shocking thing in all his life. Well, he probably hasn't read Galatians anyway. So, most right-thinking people are probably thinking, yes, that's not a bad thing to say. And then other people with their stuffy noses in the air say, he's just a populist, Demagogue. No democracy in demagoguery. But there's no democracy where people aren't actually happy. with what they're getting either. Okay, so we're well into the bit of camera now that I was thinking of reserving for the polyglot stuff, so it's a little bit less polyglottery and a bit more me going on about my opinions, but you know, you've got the German customs office to blame for that one. Even the thing which it had on its car, even though it's patrolling the Polish border, folgen and follow me, nothing about śledź mnie in Polish. You know, he's not giving any signs to the Polish people that he's obviously trying to catch, which brings me to as well something I wanted to say when I turned the camera on and didn't say it. This interesting Storkov, isn't it, up there? I don't know if it has anything to do with storks, because that's Storch anyway in German, which is stork with a sound shift. But I've never seen anything like this going on at the Dutch border. I bet there isn't anything like this going on at the Austrian border, or at the Danish border, or really at the French border, or the Luxembourg border. Yeah? Do you suppose people that go in and out every day of Luxembourg in order to do their work are subject to the same scrutiny as people now coming in from Poland? I just hasten to add that this car hasn't got British plates on it. I used to drive a car with British plates, never got stopped even the once, although these days that wouldn't stop you because a lot of people driving the British cars are Poles anyway, coming back from their jobs and going out to their jobs in Britain. But basically, they just treat Poles and Czechs differently. I've seen this kind of activity going on also around the Czech border, even more than around the Polish border at the beginning. But I never saw it going on like in the Austrian or the French or the Dutch or the Danish borders. They don't have, you know, somebody coming up to you telling you in a language that you've got every right not to understand, follow me, and then stopping and addressing you in German. Well, I suppose it is Germany. I mean, I don't know whether they know any other languages or how well they would have made it if I hadn't been willing to speak to them in German, but actually I'm quite happy to speak in German. I like German. So it's interesting, isn't it? It's interesting. Again, I'm not blaming the individuals concerned. I was a little bit bothered by the guy who didn't want to be filmed, but then at the end of the day, I kind of I asked him, do I have to turn the camera off? They said, well, yes, you have to. I'm not sure whether that is law or not. I don't have enough knowledge about German law to know. Germans are a bit iffy about privacy, so they may be right, but they agreed to the compromise of me putting it in my pocket and carrying on with the just the sound recording. So they were all right about that. So which I suppose is fair enough. Maybe not everybody wants to have their. I don't think it's a security matter, although they did say that they were looking for things like weapons and what have you. 3 at once, it's a bit much, isn't it, really, when you think about it? But then if they are going to find drugs and criminals and what have you, then maybe they need to, I don't know. So, yeah, okay. But just more and more and more of this sort of thing, you know, and when we were promised to be all one big happy family. It's all a lie. The whole European Union thing is just a great big lie. It would have been so nice if we could have taken it seriously, but anybody who takes it seriously is in for a big disappointment.